That's a very clear sign of uh, the manifestation of the fall in the use of power. It means that power is no longer used for service. It is now used for self. It is for that reason that it will be difficult for people to speak up. Okay, so that's another sign when people can't speak up. And also, we talked about this earlier, inequitable resource allocation, cronyism, favoritism. And these things have been there. If you look at James 2, so it says, my dear brothers and sisters, how can you claim to have faith in our glorious Lord Jesus Christ if you favor some people over others? What does that tell you? So one thing it tells me is that it's been there. Okay? So it's a battle that human beings have been fighting for centuries now. And then also 2 Corinthians 13:5, examine yourselves. How many of us examine ourselves? Because that's the solution. There is that tendency, because we're in a fallen world. There is the tendency for me to abuse my power, to replace service with self. Do you think that tendency is there? It is there. It is there. So we should do what? We should examine ourselves. How many of us examine ourselves? How many of us have written exams today, this year? Exams. How many of those exams were set by you? You know it's difficult to examine yourself, because it's very easy to score yourself A all round. You say A parallel. We should examine ourselves, and we should do so. Most of the ideas here are from one article by Shaw. So, and then that's where this concept is coming from. Power audits. You know what an audit is? What do you do when you audit an account? You're checking for flaws. I like that. You're checking to see whether the resources have been used the right way, or the resources have been abused. So everybody in leadership needs that power audit to check. Don't forget that we are just stewards. We are just stewards. And so before the owner of that thing that we are keeping in trust asks us, what should we do? We should ask ourselves. We will be examined. So first, what should we do? Examine ourselves. Examine ourselves. And sometimes it's difficult. So for that reason, some have surveys. In fact, sometimes leadership is so bad that if you design an anonymous survey, people can't even tell you the truth again. Sometimes it is that bad that they can no longer tell you the truth, even when you say this is anonymous. They don't believe. They know that you can go to the back end and and check who said what. So, I mean, I pray I am never in that kind of. Once you're there, it's a big problem. They're fair. Yes. So the fault is not theirs, it's the leaders. That you get to a position where people can no longer tell you the truth. Yes. That's no. You see, that's going to work if they believe that you can live with the truth. It gets to a point they believe you can't live with it. They have studied you, so they know that if they tell you, there is trouble. Real Pro Max, Shege Pro Max. Okay? So we need that feedback. You need, so sometimes people talk about 360 feedback, that is all round, because we all have blind spots. As you're sitting now, you can't see what's behind you, but some people can see it. Okay, so we should welcome those comments, and your body language will tell whether people will tell you the truth or not. They can tell whether you can live with the truth or not. Okay, so as much as possible, we should be open enough. People should be able to talk to us. People should be able to counsel us. I keep making reference to Moses. Moses spoke with God one on one. Have you ever taken time to think about that? What that means? He had a conversation with God. I mean, many of us pretend to be very spiritual, but we are not at that level. He spoke to God one on one. You know what that means? And there is the belief that if the Israelites had found his body, they would have venerated that body. He was at that level. But it took Jethro, someone who didn't speak with God, to counsel Moses. To tell Moses, this thing you're doing is foolish. You kill yourself. I mean, if anybody had the had what it takes, the qualification to say, "Were you there when God called me?" It was Moses. Where was Jethro when God called Moses? But he listened to Jethro. Yes, a Gentile. He listened. Okay, so that's the lesson for us. We should be open enough. We should be ever willing to learn. Ever willing to learn. We should never be closed. But many of us tow that path. We can't be advised. We are unteachable. Our minds are made up on virtually everything. I know this thing. You can't. Don't come and tell me. And I mean, we're ever so quick to say, you can't teach me my job. We say that a lot here, right? In Nigeria. Say, can you teach me my job? You want to teach me my job? But the truth is, yes, you can be taught. Okay, so we should be open. That's a major lesson for us. I try to learn to become a better teacher. With the way technology is changing our world, if you don't learn, after some time you'll just become a dinosaur. The world will move on. When I started teaching in the university, okay, so as an undergraduate, we were processing data. We, in my department, in my discipline, we do a lot of research, all sorts of surveys. As an undergraduate, we processed the results manually. You calculate. After some time, some funny kind of computers came. You take it to the computer center. They'll use punch cards for the processing of the data. After some time, it changed. So we started talking about using SPSS data. After some time, all of that, we still use SPSS, we use data to process the data, but we no longer do that manual data entry. So now, what happens is that the survey is online, and then you can capture the data from the back end, and you just do the processing. You'll be shocked that some of our colleagues are still in 1985 as we speak. And in fact, some of them will insist that is how it has to be done. So shall it be forever. So one professor was arguing that all these people using all these things, they are lazy people. Now, if you use SPSS, you are lazy. What is that? Calculate the thing manually. Yes. So, what's the point we are making? The world is changing. We should be teachable. We should be willing to learn. To learn. Okay? Because that's what will determine whether you'll be able to provide leadership. Yes, learn and unlearn. In fact, I'm happy you're talking about unlearning, because there are some wrong things that we have learned. We will have to unlearn them and say, okay, this thing is no longer. If I tell you the story of my typing, I learned to type the wrong way. So I started in school, but I abandoned typing midway. So I started teaching myself the wrong way, typing the way I shouldn't type. After a long period of time, I came back to my senses and told myself, if you don't do the right thing, you'll be working against yourself. So I got Mavis Bacon. Those of us, you will know that. And I started afresh. I started to unlearn all the wrong things I had learned. To replace, and you know that one is more difficult. To replace is like formatting the disk. And then you now want to install something completely. But that's the spirit. You should be able to acknowledge that I was wrong. I have to drop those things and then learn something new. So this idea is very key. Power audits. Bring around you people who can be honest with you, people who can tell you the truth. If and be willing, be teachable, be willing to learn. Be willing to learn. Sometimes you hear something and you evaluate it. Is it good? Is it desirable? Then you can learn, you can take it. Okay? But if you're fixated, your mind is made up on every issue. You know, some of us have opinions on all matters on earth and in heaven. We have our positions already on all matters. Okay? So, we'll need to keep this. It's a major tool. That power audit should be able to get feedback from those around you, from the people you're leading, from your clients, from maybe if you have, say, a board. If you're a manager, if you have a board that you're reporting to, you should be able to get feedback from the board. If you're providing services to some clients, you should be able to get feedback from the clients. If you're leading a team, you should be able to get feedback from that team. Okay, so we agree that there is a fall that has corrupted the use of power. Do we agree? Yes, the fall of man, as we have in Genesis 3, has actually brought about disruption. It has affected the use of power negatively. But there can be a redemption, and that's what we'll be talking about right now. We'll be talking about the dilemma of power and care. Because if you look at the task given to man, what was Adam's responsibility? To till, okay? To till the ground. He was to care for God's creation, essentially. Okay? Does man have any responsibility in preserving nature? Ensuring that animals don't face extinction. Is that a responsibility? Why? How is it our responsibility? How is that my responsibility? Okay, because there is no accident. God made all those things, and He gave us that responsibility to take care of everything, all of the things He created. So it's our responsibility. The earth is the Lord's. He handed it over to us. He wants us to use the power that He has given us responsibly. Okay? What is man's greatest power? And I'm not talking about legitimate power and what's our greatest power? Choice. Free will. Yes, free will. I'll say, okay, so what do we have what do we have more than any other? Yes, the brain power. You know that it is the brain power that's our greatest strength. Because if it is physical power, can you stand a gorilla, for instance, in physical strength? No. In speed, are we the best? Can we fly? Can we swim? So what exactly do we have more than any other? It's that brain power. And that brain power is superior to all other abilities, all the other things. I mean, if it is about physical strength, we'll be slaves to horses or to gorillas, for instance. They will be our lords, and they will have zoos for us, right? They will keep us in cages. But we have that. We have that brain power. It's our responsibility to care for God's creation. It is also our responsibilities. It's also our responsibility as leaders to care for those we work with, members of our teams. It's our responsibility to care, to provide care. Do you agree? You agree that you should provide care? Okay. So we'll be looking at that dilemma of power and care. Why is it a dilemma? Do they always work together? Power, care, power. Power suggests firmness, suggests being strong. And care suggests what? It suggests empathy. And sometimes that can be translated to mean being soft. Not so? Aha. If you are empathetic, then sometimes your emotions will take the better of you. You're thinking more about helping people, being compassionate. But power, I mean, sometimes power will require that you are ruthless. True or false? Can you give me examples of ruthless use of power in the Bible? Aaron. King Herod was ruthless. Okay? I mean, King Herod comes to us easily as a bad king, right? What about Solomon? Was Solomon ruthless or not? Solomon was a very, very ruthless leader. You remember? You remember the story now of how he dealt with his enemies, including his half brother. You remember the story of, I think, Adonijah? Yes. Okay. No, I think that was David. It was David. Yes. Was giving instruction to Solomon. Yes. Okay, he said, I didn't tell you to kill them, but you know what to do. Okay. So, I mean, that's power. That's power. The use of power can be ruthless, but care is on the other side. That's where you talk about empathy, kindness, compassion. Okay, so, and that's why we talk about a dilemma here. Then we'll also be looking at vulnerability, that is showing care and empathy in leadership. Leadership is about exercising power. At the same time, we're talking about empathy, talking about vulnerability in leadership, and then ways in which power can be redeemed and deployed to advance God's kingdom. So we're saying that there is a tension between wielding power that suggests firmness and extending care that suggests empathy. Okay, but we say power without accountability, unchecked discretion itself is what? Is corruption. You remember what we talked about earlier. If you have power and you can exercise discretion without any form of check and there is no accountability, that's the perfect formula for what? Corruption. You are not answerable to anybody, and there is There is a problem. Okay, you think of power without care. What will happen? Power without empathy, without compassion. Eh? Okay, you are saying that is equal to Nigeria or equal to Abacha. Power without care. It's possible to have power without care. You'll say, oh, that person is a tyrant. What about care without power? That's weakness. Care without power. You're just nice, Mr. Nice Guy. So, will that person do well in leadership? So, if you care without being firm, what should you be doing? You should be selling ice cream, right? You should be Father Christmas. Just make people happy. But the truth is that sometimes you need to be firm. I mean, if people break the law and all that is in you is care, no firmness, do you think we will still have order? We're going to descend into chaos again. Are we together? So we need both. Okay. Then we'll also be talking about vulnerable authority. Remember what we talked about earlier. We talked about power as divine stewardship. In Romans 13:1, it's clear there. All what? All authority is from God. So if you have power, if you're given any responsibility, any position of authority, just know that you are a what? A steward. You're holding that thing in trusts, and I'll be required to account for that power. Okay? So vulnerable authority is about wielding power lightly. That is striking that balance between firmness, okay, and care and empathy, if you like. Okay, and these are questions we should continue to ask ourselves. How do we handle power? And how can I use care as my moral guardrail? So if you have unchecked power, you're exercising power ruthlessly, then you want to ask yourself what kind of leader you will turn out to be. So sometimes you need this ethical guardrail. You need something to still check your exercise of power. Okay? Sometimes we put it this way. They say temper justice with mercy. I say it is judgment, not even justice. I mean, I think judgment is the harder word there. If you pronounce judgment, and you know there is a difference between judgment and justice. There can be judgment without justice, right? Aha. So justice is there. Justice is right. Judgment may not be right, and irrespective of what the judge says, justice is justice. It is there. The idea is that the court will try as much as possible to bring about justice, but often the judge cannot bring about justice. I mean, just like they tell you, go to court. So if I take what belongs to you, and I disappear, and you go to court, are you likely to? What's the probability that you're going to get justice? So in court, it's about what you are able to prove, right? If you can't prove it, the court can give judgment, and the judgment may not. It may not be just. Okay. Yes. So, but the point we are making is, I mean, there is a difference between justice and judgment. We can give judgment, yet there is no justice. As a leader, sometimes you need to judge people. You're the manager of an organization. One person keeps coming late, or the person. Imagine, for instance, that somebody breaks into the safe of the organization and steals the money. How many of us have been in that kind of situation before? You are the one in charge and money has been stolen. It's a very terrible place to be. Hmm? You are the pastor and someone has broken into the church office and the person has stolen. It's a terrible place to be because you keep thinking. You'll be suspecting the wrong people and the right people are with you, suggesting to you the wrong people. And they want you to prove that you have the Holy Spirit. So you see, it's a difficult thing. Hmm? Now, if it happens that you catch the thief, what do? Is that the time to judge that person, or to offer care and say, oh, yeah, the salary we are paying this person, the economy is bad, and let's be empathetic. Okay. So that's sometimes that's the dilemma. Do we exercise power in that situation, or we express care in that kind of situation? Okay. So we were talking earlier about vulnerability, and we should quickly point out that it's not weakness, rather it's a deliberate choice to reveal your own limitations and invite and accept empathy and mutual support. So if you say you're a person, so vulnerability in this context is not weakness, rather it's a deliberate choice. Okay. Let us look at Philippians 2:5-8. It says, in your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. And that takes us to that point of deliberate choice, which means that Christ could have chosen to remain God, but rather he chose what? He chose to come, okay? Rather, he made himself nothing, okay, by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Okay? What do we make of that in light of what we're talking about? In light of vulnerability. What do we make of this? So, as leaders, you may choose to immerse yourself in the reality of the people you're leading. Keep in mind, we're talking about choice. So, it's a deliberate thing. Christ chose to be like us. So that we can also, okay, so it's like saying, so when I talk sometimes to my children, sometimes I try to take away that feeling that you're a parent, you know everything. You want to come to their level. Okay? And that's what vulnerability means here. So Christ chose to be like us. Of course, he could have chosen otherwise, but he made that choice, and that's leadership. Okay, so I'll read this again. It says vulnerability is a deliberate choice to reveal one's limitations and invite or accept empathy. Does that make sense to us? Okay, so that's what we're talking about, showing care and empathy in leadership. So vulnerability can be described as relational glue. That is, in admitting our uncertainties and our failures, that way we normalize other people's struggles. Does that make sense to us? When I admit my own weaknesses, my limitations, my failures, then I make others understand that their own struggles are what? They're normal. Am I communicating? Okay. But if I give the impression that no, that's too simple, that thing you're talking about is too elementary, it does not make sense, how do you think that will affect the followers psychologically? They just feel hopeless. But if they see that you have your struggles too, you have your limitations, then that way they know that their own struggles are also normal. Does that make sense to us? I mean, Christ came to this world, and we'll still get to that point. He wept. What does that tell us? He came to this world. He was hungry, like us. So it helps us understand that our day-to-day struggles are normal. He has been through those things. As leaders, we should also be that vulnerable. That is, we should show that side of us to our followers. They should never see Mr. Perfect in you. That is someone who is not normal. You are not a normal human being. And sometimes we get things like that. Sometimes they will say, no, you we can't talk about you. So if they're saying you can't talk about you, it could mean that we have not done enough to be vulnerable before them because they are seeing us as superhuman. That is, we are not at their level. So if we can acknowledge, oh, I struggled with this. On this matter, I don't even have an answer. Are we together? But how many of us want to say that? A prophet wants to say he doesn't know or he doesn't have an answer. Because already they think that you sit with God and he shows you everything. That's how we want to portray ourselves. Okay? Or in management, we want to show that we have answers to all the questions. And they begin to see us as superhuman. And that can be a problem. Okay? So, how many of us can openly discuss our weaknesses with the people we lead? How many of us can discuss our fears with the people we lead? These are things we want to carefully think about. And sometimes people will say that if you reveal your weaknesses, you are finished. Because they will want to use those things against you. And that's why we talk about vulnerability. You know what it is to be vulnerable? You are open to attack or to exploitation. Does that make sense to us? But as leaders, was Christ vulnerable or not? How was Christ betrayed? How? How was Christ betrayed? Just tell me. A kiss. Was he vulnerable or not? How did it happen? It's because he lived with the people. They knew his lifestyle, what he would do, and so it was predictable. So it's like, just like we're saying, sometimes we don't want to talk about those things because we fear that those things can be used against us. But Christ was vulnerable enough for the people around him, at least for Judas, to see something to use against him. They knew he would be somewhere. And even when he had anguish, when he had fears, did he hide it? No. And he partnered with his disciples, told them that they should watch with him. How can the King of Kings want to partner with human beings to say, watch, keep watch with me? But that's what he did. Are we together? Okay. And that's the idea of vulnerability. Showing care and empathy in leadership. Okay. So the next thing is to consider how power can be redeemed and deployed to advance God's kingdom. Don't forget that it's a fallen world, and we have the fall of man documented in Genesis 3. We're familiar with the story, right? Okay. But we can do that with the resurrection power of Christ. Okay. After his resurrection, what did Christ say? All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. All authority. I mean, it all belonged to him anyway, before time. And he reaffirmed after his resurrection that all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Okay, so if we tap into that authority, into that resurrection power, then we can deploy, we can use God's power the way He intended originally. We can use it to equip disciples. We can use that power to serve the marginalized. He came to do what? To set the captives free. And so if your power is used to oppress the weak, then you're doing the exact opposite of what Christ came to do. He came to set the captives free, the marginalized, the weak, the vulnerable. We can use that power to advance justice, and we can use it to bring about God's kingdom here on earth. It says, thy will be done where? In heaven. Is it thy will be done in heaven? Thy will be done where? On earth, here. Okay. So in your little space, you can bring about a semblance of heaven right here on earth. But you will not do that when they put 3 apples on your table. There are 3 people and you have taken 2 already. You have cornered. You're establishing injustice already. And we see that at work. It's funny, right? In some settings, when money is given to the church unit, when money is given to the choir master takes 50%. Then all the choristers may be up to 30. They will share the 50% because the choir master has taken 50%. Or the pastor takes 50%. Then all the other workers will share what is left and things like that. And when we do that, can we sincerely say we are bringing about God's kingdom here on earth? We're just replicating that same injustice that's associated with a fallen world. So it's easy for us to parrot, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth. Yet we perpetrate injustice. Okay? And that's a problem. So the kingdom, the way to bring about, to redeem this power is to apply upside down kingdom principles. That is, it is not the type of kingdom that we're familiar with in the world. What did Christ say? He said, let us read this together. They do what? They lord it over them. Yes, let's go on. Okay. 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 Is the message clear? That is the definition of upside down kingdom. The kingdom of the world that we are familiar with is the type where the kings and the lords lord it over the people. Are we together? But is that what we are called to do? It's the exact opposite. It's been flipped, such that the leaders are what? Servants. The leaders are servants. They must be the servants. Whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For the Son of Man, the leader, our leader, did not come to be served, but what? But to serve. And that's the way to redeem that power. That is the original. That's the way to go back to the original design. Upside down kingdom, not what we're familiar with. Okay. So those are the words of Christ. He does not expect us to conform with the standard that we're familiar with. So whoever is going to lead. So if money comes and you have to share, and you have already, as the leader, you have taken 50%, and and others that will share 50%, you are lording it over them, right? So you're just doing what the people of the world will do. Rather, it should be the other way. The leader should be the servant of all. And that's the way to redeem that power and to deploy the power to advance God's kingdom. So, we're to empower, that is, empower the people and not necessarily lord it over them or control them. We should seek justice with power. We should protect the vulnerable. Okay? Don't forget what we've been talking about. Power audit. In doing all of these things, because there is the tendency for us to drift into that manifestation of the fallen man in his exercise of power. We should constantly audit ourselves. We should check ourselves. How are we? I mean, we need. So that's a major thing we do as human beings that I doubt that other animals do. Reflection. I don't know whether other animals reflect. Do they reflect? Do they think about the things they have done? I don't know. I mean, I don't speak dog or goats, so I can't ask them. Because sometimes I see them, they are pensive. I don't know whether they are thinking. Okay? But I know that human beings have that ability. You can think through the things you have done and ask yourself, even though not all of us are that sincere, we may not be sincere enough, but it's something we should do. We should think about how we have exercised power and think about whether we have exercised power the way Christ would.